Hello, my name is Aaron Pabone. This is Game Journalism Network. Joining me for a live discussion here on GJN, we got Ashe Schow from the Washington Examiner and codeGrit. Introduce yourselves, guys. Ashe, starting with you.
Hi, Ashe Schow. I'm a opinion writer for the Washington Examiner as well as the New York Observer. I usually cover gender politics, but I've been a gamer my whole life and have been a Gamergate supporter since the beginning.
And I'm codeGrit, Jason. I'm mainly just a gamer, Gamergate supporter. I've written a bunch of Medium pieces. I guess that's really it. Mainly just a lifelong gamer.
Now, Jason, we actually brought you on also because of your Medium pieces, and one of your recent ones, I'm actually trying to look it up right here. My pad's acting a little bit weird, was how the media's reaction to #Gamergate and its global failures for gamers. And towards the end, you also bring up everything with the UN Women's Report and everything like that. You brought up one interesting thing that I wanted to bring up was Jack Thompson in your report. And a lot of people have recently been saying that Annita Sarkesian is the second form of Jack Thompson, or Jack Thompson's final form. There's so many ways people are spinning this, obviously. But something else that was brought up online in a very recent discussion on Kotaku in Action, someone wrote an open letter to the writers of Penny Arcade. I'm not sure if you have followed anything on Kotaku in Action, so you are aware of what I'm talking about?
I saw the link. I don't remember all the details, but I did see, and I did read the post.
Okay, well, for our viewers, the post in general was that someone wrote an open letter. I don't remember the Redditor's name, unfortunately, but the open letter specifically talked about how the writers of Penny Arcade were attacking Jack Thompson with a bunch of other people at the same time, and with a lot of the things that they were saying to Jack Thompson, specifically, I hate Jack Thompson, oh, like, we're going to make video games of Jack Thompson and beat him up, Jack Thompson is full of S, and all these other things that people were saying. If we were to spin what was being said with Jack Thompson, just change that name to Annita Sarkesian, all of a sudden, people would be hated for that. Specifically, people would be called misogynists. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I agree that's how people would react, but I firmly also agree that Penny Arcade should do that comic, right? Penny Arcade should put her name in Jack Thompson's place because she really is. I don't want to say she's the final form at Jack Thompson because when Anita's gone, there'll be another one, right? Like, there will always be somebody to attack what we're doing, but Penny Arcade absolutely should do that. Because it's only fair, right? Just from the fair standpoint, it's only fair, right? Jack Thompson got death threats. People threw bricks through his windows. People, threatened his life and assassination attempts and blah, 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 blah. And the media was behind him, right? Like, the gaming media was all behind that. 100% was pushing that, right? Like, go after Jack. Jack sucks. And then you have Annita, and nobody wants to open their mouth. Nobody wants to say a word. And I don't think the media so much agrees with her. I think they're just afraid to talk about it.
Now, this question's for both of you. Are there any similarities between Jack Thompson and Annita Sarkesian?
Absolutely. What would I guess the follow-up question would be, what would they be, right? And maybe, and this is unfair to Annita, but if you look at some of the stuff her writer, right, Josh or John, whatever his actual real name is, spouts, is pretty much exactly what Jack Thompson was saying, right? Like, video games cause violence, video games turn kids into killers, video games are the work of the devil, right? Like, it's Jack Thompson's argument. Annita just threw sexism in with Jack Thompson's argument.
Right. There's also the notion of going, rather than playing a game and coming to an independent conclusion, you go to play a game or view games looking for your own conclusions, which you already had in your mind, which both of them tend to do. You especially have it with Annita, who seems to be playing games now just to find material for her videos, rather than being a gamer who discovered these issues.
Okay, let's go back. Let's go to the key topic at hand. That was just something I really wanted to throw out of the way. But the key topic at hand specifically is cyberviolence against women and girls. And this was a report released by the United Nations Broadband Commission for Digital Development, specifically under the United Nations Women's Group. How many of you have been seeing the reports on this?
I've seen them.
Seen them. Now, of course, this has already caused a lot of controversy and criticism. One of the key ones has been, is cyberviolence a real thing? Now, some people have been saying that it is. Some people are saying it isn't. Some people are saying that it's not just a women's issue, that it's a human issue in general. What are your opinions on that?
Well, you had the, Christine Hoff Sommers was great at tweeting out the, Pew Research that shows that men are actually more likely to get threats or be called names or most of the terrible things online. There's two categories where women actually get it more, which is, I guess, threats of sexual violence or stalking. But in every other category, men, by far, get more of the threats than women. So it's really not a women's issue. There are issues with it, but it's also a whole lot of people taking things and really, really thinking things are worse than they are. I mean, you had Annita's comments where she was saying that there's levels of harassment, where there's violence, but there's also harassment like saying, you suck and things like that. And even though she said there was different levels to it, it's still saying that you suck is a form of harassment. And it's just, sometimes, like, if you're starting to view every comment, every criticism as harassment, then harassment looks like a big problem. But if you just ignore that people are going to disagree with you, sometimes they're going to disagree with you in not very poetic ways, but none of that is actually dangerous to you. Some of it obviously is. Annita has gotten threats, but we're talking about the you suck comments. It's not actually affecting your life unless you let it, which clearly she is in order to get more attention.
And I would totally agree. Though I'm with you, this is.
I'm sorry, Code. Can you repeat your comment from the top? You started breaking up there.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, and I apologize if I'm jumping ahead. And I would agree with everything Ashe said. But the problem with the UN report is it's a problem you see a lot with those. I'm going to say those type of people, right? But you see those type of people on both spectrums. It's something that's easy to agree with, right? If you take the context of saying you suck out of the equation, it's easy to go harassment is bad, right? And that's really the problem with the report, is it gives people an angle to go, well, forget all that, right? Annita was crazy. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about harassment, right? And we should, but the report is, in my mind, terrible because it opens that door, right? Like, political correctness in the 80s and 90s was, hey, we shouldn't call black people the N-word. Well, we all agree, right? And it opened the door, and it was a gateway to where we are today. And this report, in my mind, is that, right? It gives people the ability, right? Annita was so crazy, it's easy for people to go, well, ignore that crazy, but let's talk about what the report really meant. And if you actually read the report, what the report really meant was telling women they suck is mean, right? And telling women they suck is violent, and it's and it's the same thing as sexual assault.
Right, because when we look at, I'm sorry, Ashe, you go.
But even beyond that, the report was linking to things that, we even, and I'm sure we'll probably get into this, but even Zoe Quinn is kind of distancing herself from the report, because the report was linking these kind of this little harassment online, or even threats of harassment online, to sex trafficking and prostitution, where it was just the UN was throwing in everything into this report, and we're oh, it's just, here's cyber violence, but here's everything that women are doing that we don't like. And we can get into sex trafficking and prostitution again, but it doesn't really have anything to do with what Annita and Zoe Quinn were talking about. Which
was crazy to begin with, but right, it's the gateway, right? It's easy to jump on harassment is bad, and then let it be. I don't want to say co-opted, because then I sound like a nut, right? But let your cause be co-opted, and that's exactly what happened to Annita and Zoe, right? Is they let themselves be co-opted for something far greater, and it links back to Jack Thompson, right? Because that report links to stuff frickin' Jack Thompson said.
Right, we're gonna get into all that actually in a second, but
okay,
because we actually do have some fair points here, because we can acknowledge that Zoe Quinn and Annita Sarkesian did receive online harassment. They were victims of online bullying, and that's actually what the term is. I wouldn't personally call it cyber violence. I would call it cyberbullying. That's what it is. They're adding a new spin on a word, and Ash, I guess you can agree with me here as a journalist, and by that logic and by that proxy, an English major, you can't add a suffix to a word and automatically make that a new word.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, because when we look at on this report, I'm looking at pages 24 and 25 specifically. Page 24, Zoe Quinn is in here, and it says that she was a target of Gamergate, which is full of ambiguity right there. Suffered harassment, which is true, including doxing, rape threats, and death threats. Now, this is based on possible police reports as well. And says that she founded Crash Override to help victims of online harassment. But when we also look at Annita Sarkesian, endured a campaign of sexual harassment, including rape threats and death threats, which unfortunately is true. These are actually true based on her Twitter profiles and everything we've been seeing online. Personal web pages and social media accounts were hacked. This is unfortunately true. And personal information was distributed. This is also unfortunately true. But then she was sent images of herself being raped by video game characters. And that's where it gets a little bit. Wouldn't this be similar to back in the day journalism when we've seen political politicians being victims of political cartoons?
Yeah. I mean that's where we kind of get into that plus the day-to-day grind of disagreement, where you start to get away from, yes, some bad things, some very bad things really did happen to you, and now you're trying to keep that going, keep that level of victimhood going, so that everything, even something that is the equivalent of a political cartoon, which we know politicians get, very, at least back in the day, it's not so bad anymore, but that these things happen, that you get a caricature of yourself, that bad cartoons are drawn. I mean, you're starting to elevate that into the same category as online doxing or rape or death threats. And even when you talk to some of those threats, are they people angry on the internet, or are they actually legitimate threats?
All right. We also go to the other parts, because this is in Box 1, recent cyberviolence targets. Again, this is page 24 to 25 of the report, which I have on here right now. We actually have, which would be considered legitimized reports of quote-unquote cyberviolence. We have reports of people like Amanda Todd, who were victims of cyberbullying, including sexual exploitation that led to taking her own life. We had Blandine, a schoolgirl from the Democratic Republic of Congo, victim of child pornography. Naked pictures were posted on a friend's website leading to humiliation. And the family did not approach Facebook because they were unaware of a procedure for reporting abuse to an intermediary. Now, these are legitimate reports, and a lot of people have been saying that there's been a lot of criticism that Annita and Zoe Quinn, Annita Sarkesian and Zoe Quinn, are on this same docket.
And they shouldn't be, in my opinion, right? But stepping back to a couple things you said, right? Like cyberbullying is a term I personally hate, and that's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's so easy to get away from, right? Like I was picked on as a kid online, but it was easy to get away from, right? You close the computer down, you change your screen name. I mean, the internet's anonymous, right? So you change your Facebook to a different name, and you can like make it all go away. You know what I mean? Like it disappears. Whereas if you're bullied in real life in school, you can't get away from that, other than to convince your parents to send you to a new school. Online, you can get away from it. Now, posting naked pictures of you and ruining your life, that's a whole nother level from somebody told me I suck, or somebody called me a liar, or somebody said they hate me, right? Like, those two things aren't of the same quality at all, in my opinion.
Understood. All right.
I don't think they belong on the same report at all.
Understood. Okay, so in this report, there's also been a lot of criticism specifically with the shoddiness of this report. Ash, do you want to take the lead on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nero had a really great write-up of this, but just how the links went to nothingness. They went to ridiculous, debunked, like the Jack Thompson stuff. They went to just broken links. I think the everyone's personal favorite is the footnote to somebody's C drive that like really you're supposed to be doing a report on the internet, and you don't seem to know how computers work, but
right.
There was just empty footnotes. It was just so poorly done that it's just, how long did you spend on this? I mean, you could just click on the links and how many just went to nothing or didn't even work. Like, did nobody check this?
Right, especially when there's been a bunch of people online who have already been doing their own research on this. They've been asking college professors and high school teachers on if they were to grade this to a student. A lot of them said they would give them an F or tell them to rewrite it. Now, some of the statistics actually, some of these statistics were made by Jamie Bravo, also on Medium.com. Jason, I think you also linked to him in your article as well. 36% of the citations in this report by the United Nations are either broken links, duplicates, have lazy sourcing, and 3 of the citations were blank. And 15% of the citations were linked to the UN and various subdivisions within the UN itself. How could someone like the UN, even a subdivision in the UN, come out with such a shoddy report, especially when it's something that could be deemed of importance to a general public?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, how the UN could. My gut reaction is because the UN is not very good, right? Like, I mean, that's my gut reaction, but...
It's an agenda. Why do you check an agenda? There's no reason to check an agenda, and they know journalists will just completely parrot what's in the report without looking at the footnotes. So it takes people who, you know, are skeptical of the report to actually look into it, because most journalists aren't going to be skeptical because the report confirms all of their biases.
Right, especially when we look at... I'm sorry.
Oh, and I was just going to say, once you have somebody who's skeptical, like a Nero, right, or an Ashe, it becomes very easy for other journalists to then discredit them. And the UN knows all this, right? Like, they went into this report knowing this is going to be easy, right? The world will follow suit. I don't think they counted on the world being quiet about it, but they expected everybody to just follow the report and run with it.
Right, especially since there's actually been a lot of new statistics and newer sciences that have actually been debunking almost everything in this in the citations. A good example of this is one report linked to pornography as a source of violence against women. However, in a recent study, and we're talking about last week, this study came out, the Journal of Sex Research actually said that people who watch pornography think more highly of women. Pornography users hold more gender egalitarian issues than non-users in a representative American sample. So there's already being scientific reports that are debunking half the reports on here, and some of the reports that were mentioned were actually going all the way back to 2000, saying that video games cause violence.
Right. Well, I'd say it's a common tactic. You know that it's confirmation bias. You go looking for these reports. You go looking for the studies that confirm what you want to believe. It doesn't matter whether they're old. And again, it goes back to the media wasn't going to check it. The media was just going to parrot what was in the report because it's from the UN. And just for some reason, the UN is above reproach, even though, you know, places like Saudi Arabia that actually have poor records of treating women are on the Human Rights Council.
Exactly. It was like I say, and you asked this question, I think, or at least implied it, and I know Zoe Quinn asked it, is what does pornography even have to, like, how did that even get in a report on cyber violence to begin with, right? How does men watching pornography have anything to do with cyber violence, which is not anything I could even get out of that report other than men watch porn online?
Now, it is fair to assume that, well, when we look at the American porn industry, it's actually being more equally accepted in various areas. When we look at people who actually work in the American porn industry, a lot of women have been stepping forward and unionizing and having a lot of various things towards them that have been immensely successful. We can't say the same for other countries. We don't know how their porn companies operate. It might be a little bit different, which is fair to assume. However, when we look at someone like Mercedes Carrera, who also is a pro-gamer gator, she's been outspoken on everything that's been going on, and she's even been very open about the porn industry, and for her, it's been the most accepting industry she's ever worked in.
Absolutely. I spoke with Mercedes many, many months ago when I used to stream, and the one point she made was that this is something that'll never end for her, right? Like, her industry is always under attack, and it's always being shoehorned into reports like this. But she has always spoken very highly of how wonderful the industry is to her, and how she's actually got more respect from people now that she became a porn actress, right? But that's probably, and I don't mean to downplay Mercedes, but that's probably easy for her to say, right? She's like an astrophysicist or something. You know what I mean? Like, she's very easy to respect.
Now, let's go back to Ashe. Were you going to say something?
No, not really.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to people assuming what cyberviolence is, and going with harassment, and going with criticism. This has actually been a big deal because we have a lot of websites who can moderate what people say and do. For instance, if someone can flag someone for doing something wrong online, i.e., copying someone, plagiarizing someone, or harassing someone through the internet. But now, when we have people like Annita, Sarkesian, and Zoe Quinn who are saying that criticism is a form of harassment, what dangers could this lead to for various websites, including YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and everything else like that?
Well, I mean,
Social media in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, you saw, what was Arthur Chu tweeting about, like removing instant social media or whatever, just because it can lead to these things. It leads to censorship because these crimes become a subjective thing, right? Harassment becomes subjective rather than something you can measure. Was this egg account really legitimate in saying you deserve to die, or was it just a dumb egg account, right? So if you start saying that all of it is, then anybody who says, well, this person criticized me, and you have the the people on your side, right? The social justice on your side, then anybody can be accused of this stuff simply for disagreeing. And I mean, I don't really want to live in a world where you're not allowed to disagree with people or disagree with certain people, because let's always remember that it's only certain people that you can't disagree with. And I just don't want to live in a world where you can't disagree with people or where people can't disagree with me.
Well, exactly, right? And the problem, right, it absolutely is going to lead to censorship and all that, right? But the other problem is the minute you say you can't disagree, as Ash is saying with me, you give the critic unchallenged control over everything, right? A critic like Annita can say anything she wants about anything, and she just is left unchallenged, and she gets basically unparalleled control over some market, some industry, because you can't answer her, right? Video games cause sexism, and there's nothing you can do about it.
It's up to them.
That's the statement of fact. And Ash has to write that, and Ash can't ever challenge it, right? She just has to write, Annita says video games cause sexism, and that's it. And then that becomes what people believe, all across the board. Whatever the critic says is what people are going to believe.
And by their logic, and this is my opinion, of course, this news report could be considered, by their logic, cyberviolence because we're actively talking about her.
Yes, and I welcome the FBI to come after me for it.
So now, one thing that was also kind of shoddy with this report is it led to the belief that this is only attacking, that cyberviolence is only towards women. Is it safe to assume that this is false? And what other targets can you think of?
Well, we know that pro Gamergate people have been targeted as well. I mean, I remember at Airplay when several of the panelists, male panelists, got doxxed while they were up on the stage. So, I mean, men are the target as well. And again, that Pew Research report showing that men are more likely to get be called names, which or whatever, or have actual threats. I mean, it's just not a pure women's issue.
Right.
Absolutely.
There is actually two. Is what you're saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree it's not just a women's issue, right? Like, men get harassed too. I've been harassed online and I'm a nobody, right? Like, it's just part of, and that's not good, but that's just part of being online, and that's part of being anonymous. Though I will say I'm not surprised the report was as biased as it was, because they only asked UN women, right? Like, they didn't seek a separate opinion, right? They just went to the UN Women's Organization and said, tell me about cyberviolence. They didn't should be up about women issues.
Right. Well, they had the narrative in their head already,
Exactly.
They wanted to show that women are victims everywhere, no matter where they go, no matter what they do. Women just need somebody's help, like the UN, and that was what they wanted to prove. So sure, you only talk to women about it.
Okay, we also got Alison joining in on the discussion. Alison, thank you for coming in.
Hi, I'm actually very sorry. I didn't realize that you guys were still doing it, because I did. There was no message after I said which date, so I apologize for not getting on. And I actually have a appointment in about 10 minutes, so
Oh,
I won't be able
I'm
to
sorry
go.
about that. Well, Alison,
How long
we're
is
gonna prioritize on you. What?
How long is the show going on for? How long is the show going on for?
Well, we were planning for doing this for about an hour, so we got about half an hour roughly left.
Okay, all right. Well, I can give you 10 minutes, so.
Okay, no, that's fine. So we're actually gonna backtrack. You're familiar with the UN's Women's Report Commission and everything of that nature, everything that's been going on this week, correct?
Well, I'm reasonably familiar with it. I haven't read it entirely through myself, but Hannah has, and I've read and I've been party to her summary, so I do know what they're suggesting, and I do know how full of flaws it is. So.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons we want to bring you on because you're known for being a men's right advocate, an MRA, and this report specifically, it seems to the agenda that seems to be pushed is that this is only towards women. This is actually the question we were recently asking was that it seems that cyberviolence is only affecting women. As an MRA, is there any examples you can prove where this is completely false?
Well, yeah, I actually did look we did a bit of research into the science. There are people who are researching in the field who, like domestic violence and rape, are not actually researching with an ideological bias. And these kinds of
I'm sorry to interrupt that. Alison, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can hardly hear you. Could you repeat that again?
Oh, sorry. You know what? I'll try to get to a place where I have a better microphone. That might be a good idea. Again, I'm really sorry about this. I didn't realize it was.
No, that's okay. Just if you need to log out and come back in, just let us know.
What I was saying. Hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Okay. A little bit better, yes.
I'll just fix this momentarily. Just give me a second.
No problem. Okay, there's two examples I can actually give about what's been going on, specifically towards males who have been cyberviolence online, attacked, cyberbullying, a lot better. Two examples I can give, obviously, are Total Biscuit, the cynical Brit. He was, while in the middle of chemotherapy, he was actually getting harassed online, saying that his cancer to take him, that he deserved this cancer, and things of that nature. We also have people like Thunderfoot and Sargon Avocado who've been constantly attacked online just for their thoughts and criticisms. And they have gotten, if this was towards a woman, this would be significantly worse off, depending on your opinion on that. So this is not necessarily just towards women, this is also towards men. Alison, your opinions on that?
Well, like I was saying before, and apparently you didn't hear, like what we've been seeing in the domestic violence and sexual assault fields, there are non-aligned, unbiased researchers into these fields who are finding information about who the victims are that completely contradicts what the feminist narrative is, or even what you would expect the narrative to be. Like, I mean, it's not just feminist; it's also, there's a traditionalist attitude towards male and female sexuality, that male sexuality is predatory and female sexuality is passive. But so in this case, in the cyberviolence case as well, we located research from unaligned researchers, and it once again what it found was that there was parity. Boys and girls in the one study I looked at, it was boys and girls, equally experience cyberviolence on this kind of bullying. It also mentioned that bullying in general is more often experienced by boys. But in this case, it found a parity. And all of the resources that I've looked at so far don't support the idea that this is a uniquely, like this is something that women are victims of uniquely. But what I found also is I think that there's this tendency that if a problem also affects men or boys, we tend to dismiss it more. It becomes less interesting to people to want to resolve unless there's a female victim, and that really goes to the damseling narrative that our society really likes, and feminists had too. But again, and this is one of the things that personally infuriates me, and I identify as a men's rights activist mostly because you can't advocate for men's rights without people losing their shit, because I also advocate for women's rights. And in this case, what about women's rights not to be targeted with this disproportionate victimhood that doesn't add up, that doesn't act, there's no actual evidence that it exists, and yet we are being targeted as victims. That ruins women's quality of life, it ruins their confidence, it ruins their belief that the online world is a safe space that they, well, not necessarily a safe space, but a space that they can navigate freely without being concerned as women. What price tag do we put on that? And why are we selling it so cheaply to maintain a narrative of that doesn't help anyone? I mean, if boys are also victims, then any kind of approach that doesn't help them won't help anyone. Or even asking the question, do people need help for cyber violence? I mean,
this actually leaves me with two follow-up questions on that. First of all, do you believe that cyber violence is a real term? This question is for everybody, actually. Do you believe that cyber violence is a real term, or a term that has been misused, or should be a different term altogether? Now, I know we briefly touched on that before, but since Alison's in here, I want to re-ask that question.
I think that cyber violence is not a real thing. You can't say that something that you can delete an email, you can mute a tweeter, you can block someone on a YouTube channel. When someone presents something nasty to you on the internet, and it's not a credible threat, because sometimes they are credible threats, you decide how long you have to engage with it. With an attack, one of the scary elements of an attack, of a true attack, is that you don't decide when it ends. That's what the nature of being attacked. So if you are the one who's deciding when this thing ends, when you delete the email, when you mute the tweeter, when you ban the comment or just delete the comment, I mean, when you're deciding when your engagement ends with the material, how can you call it an attack? Like, it's now, be that as it may, I mean, if there's repeated and credible threats being sent to your email address, that's different. But that's because the violence isn't the emailing. The violence is the potential threat of taking it into the real world, and then it becomes something meaningful. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, I guess maybe repeat what I said before, which is why I hate the term cyberbullying, and I don't think cyber violence is a thing. Just because you can walk away from it, right? Like, and as somebody who was cyberbullied in high school, you can walk away from it. You can make it go away, unlike real sexual assault and real physical violence. And that's not to say there aren't real threats of violence online. I'm certain there are. But 9 times out of 10, it's a jerk being a jerk, and they're going to be a jerk regardless, so they don't mean anything by it. But you can make it go away. You can delete the email. You can close a laptop. You can close a little X, right? And it makes me wonder, people like Annita and Zoe and all these people, what they are actually thinking, because they use this block bot, they disable the comments, they do all this stuff, yet they still say it's this bad. What's really going on, right? Like, I have to ask what's really happening if you've shut everybody else out, right, and it's just you, which is definitely Annita Sarkesian. How is this still as bad as you say?
Yeah, that's another point. And I've also seen her wall of hate. And aside from the fact that, a lot of it was, like, more than usual, for most YouTubers it's not like 90% sort of, or 85% snarky criticism, and I mean that. It was slightly snarky criticism. About 85% was slightly snarky criticism. About 10% was totally glowing praise, and then about 5% was like empty, ridiculous threatoids, like, I wish you would get raped. Well, Annita, there are no passive-aggressive rapists, and that's passive-aggressive. I wish you would. Well, if wishes were horses, everyone would ride, right? I mean, that's not going to go anywhere. So it's like, what she experienced is experienced by almost every YouTuber on a day-to-day basis. Maybe she had a lot more criticism, but in many cases, she never really allowed the criticism to be aired. So when she gave one avenue for people to critique her, of course they're going to do that. But aside from it being highly criticized, I've read through it. It wasn't that bad. I mean, I recently received a message on my my channel that was much more, like, compared to the empty threatoids, it was more personal, it was more detailed, but it was like, it's like you still laugh it off because it's not realistic. And I was thinking as I was reading this, how far Annita would have gone with this one, because it was worse probably than anything that she had received. If she had received that, I think, what would she be, the Pope now? I don't know.
Yeah, it's at this point elevating minor things into massive events that it's the disconnect. And going back to what Alison had said earlier about this whole damsel in distress, but Annita apparently doesn't like in video games, but in real life totally okay with, and it's not empowering for women. It's completely infantilizing.
Okay, Alison has to go. Alison, thank you for coming on. I know it was shorter than we hoped, but thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling us that.
Well, if you do go longer, like I don't know how long I'll be gone, but should I just stick on in case you're still around while I'm back?
Well, we're more likely gonna wrap this up around 10 minutes till 1. So, but we'll bring you back on a future discussion if possible.
Okay. Well, sorry again for missing and
No,
thank you for your patience, and thank
No,
you for inviting
it's
me
fine.
on. I appreciate that.
No, it's no problem. Thank you very much. Anyway, so like we were saying, so it's safe to assume that harassment is real, but violence isn't, because that's more of a trumped-up term, I guess we can say.
Yeah, I would kind of go with that. You can have threats of violence, but you can't reach through your computer and hit somebody. So physical violence, yeah, I don't like the term cyber violence, and I don't think a lot of even some of the people that are on the side of, hey, this is all harassment, are I don't think that's just a great term.
Now, there's actually been a lot of people have actually been concerned that with this new women's report, this is also going to lead to bigger problems in gaming, especially since we were almost close to near censorship when Jack Thompson was one of the people who were speaking out against video game violence. But when we look at also when the government has stepped in the past with geek culture in general, when we look back to the 1950s, that a lot of people were assuming that comic books were the source of youth violence, which led to the Comics Code Authority, which led to a lot of comic books being censored. Now, over time, that got proven that was incorrect, and slowly but surely, a lot of comic books started phasing out the Comics Code Authority for their own rating system. Now, we look at the SRB as a minor example as what happened with video game violence, but with something like this, is there a threat to video games development in general with what we're seeing now at the UN?
Absolutely, right? I mean, anytime you get in front of the world and you say, this thing is bad and it needs to go away, somebody's going to act on that. Do I think there's a direct, immediate, imminent threat to somebody in the Western world, say the U.S., not even like Canada and Great Britain, but just the U.S.? No. Do I think some of this stuff could creep into some of the Western world? Absolutely, right? The UK's already got pretty stringent pretty loose what is and what isn't harassment, right? Same with Canada. The U.S., on the other hand, our freedom of speech, our freedom of art laws, right? Those things are pretty well protected here. So I don't know if here in the U.S. we have much to worry about, but I think the rest of the world absolutely should be concerned.
We do have to worry in the U.S. If you're looking at what's happening on college campuses, all of those protections you just talked about have gone right out the window, where we're now catering to the most easily offended. If you think, and it's not even if you think something's bad, if you think something's bad for someone else, you can make sure that a college professor isn't allowed to teach it, in the name of a trigger warning, in case somebody might have their feelings hurt about something bad that may have happened to them at some point in their life. So we're seeing that in the U.S. Is it going to get into actual laws? We don't know. I mean, there's a couple of New York University law professors who are trying to bring some of this stuff into the legal code. So, I mean, these things can happen in the U.S. And my biggest fear is just how do we stop it? What do we do to stop it? Because anybody that speaks up against this stuff, like us, who are sitting here saying, like, no, this is crazy, we're shouted down as misogynists and crazy people and awful human beings. And it's just, how do you just keep breaking that mold? You have to reach the people that aren't involved in a completely not angry way, which sometimes like our emotions get going. So we might comment on Twitter and it's puts somebody off. So it needs to be someone out there who's just politely disagreeing. And granted, they're still going to be called awful. I mean, Christina Hoff Sommers is as like polite as you can get in her critiques, and yet she's just looked at as this horrible person. So, but at the same time, people who aren't involved in these issues, I mean, they just, from what I've seen, they tend to be like, wait, what? This is what's going on? Like, they just don't believe it because it's just so absurd.
Right, and especially as a fellow journalist, because especially when we look at people who do political journalism writings and things of that nature, would it be safe to say that political journalists who talk about politicians actually say worse things than video game critics?
I don't know if I want to go that far. They might say some terrible things about Republican politicians they can get away with, but yeah, I mean, you even see it in political journalism where you're allowed to take somebody completely out of context. You're allowed to just put out personal, baseless attacks, and you get protected. Because again, it's it's who's receiving the criticism is the most important, whereas this criticism is a complete non-issue if you're looking at criticism of a conservative woman, for example, right? That's just right-wingers getting upset. But if the same exact things are said to, someone of the correct persuasion, right, which is, an Annita Sarkesian or anybody on the left, then there's an outrage. So it's almost like completely dependent on who is receiving the criticism.
Right. Right now, there's also been a lot of whispers in Gamergate in general that gamers should mobilize and go to Washington and speak to Washington. Do you think this is possible? And if so, what would we be saying to Washington to hear the other side of this argument?
Well, what is Washington doing right now in response to the media narrative of Gamergate? Like, right, we have like the media reporting on these things, but I haven't really seen any movement on the Hill to enact laws. I think there might have been a bill that isn't going anywhere, but there's been nothing that's like really gotten any steam. So part of it to me is, do you want to preempt and go there and say, hey, here's what's happening to us, and possibly inform them of this, or do you want to, in case they do end up doing a bill, you've got this preemptive relationship, or do you want to just think, okay, well, if they haven't done anything serious now, maybe they're not planning to, and leaving the issue alone? I don't know. You kind of, what do you think is going to be the best avenue? Because we've seen in the past, right, with Congress trying to do something about violent video games, and it gets, shouted down. It looks ridiculous. So is that would it possibly work today with the war on women angle? It might have a better chance of working, but you gotta, figure out a strategy of what are you going to do if you come to Washington to combat something that is so far not really gaining steam.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea, right? I kind of rolled my eyes when you said that. Not because I think it's a bad idea, but because what is Gamergate going to go in front of Washington for, right? Like the same thing we're mocking them for. We're going to go in front of Washington and say these people online don't like us. Like, I mean, What are we really going to go, right? I mean, to say they're trying to take away our freedoms, at which point Congress is going to laugh at you and go, we've done no such thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to bring up yet other than the media hates us. Well, so the media hates you. So what? Right? And the problem is, and the other side is, if you go in front of Congress, it's got to be bigger than video games. Congress don't give a jack crap about video games, right? They should, because it's an astronomically big market, but they don't. They never have, and they probably never will. So then to really go in front of Congress, you really have to embrace the idea that this is a culture war. And I don't think there are many in Gamergate who are ready to accept that this is becoming a culture war. So I don't think there would be much to gain by going in front of Washington right now, and I think it might do more harm to the community than good.
But at the same time, I'm willing to and I'm sure, Code, you are as well, willing to listen to what they think they're going to go accomplish. So, I mean, maybe there's just something I'm not thinking of right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely, willing to listen. I'm with you. I just don't see what you would get out of it.
Okay. One last question. This is for everybody. Is there anything in the UN Women's report that you feel is actually on the money? Is something that needs to be addressed?
Sure. So you mentioned that story, and I don't remember her name, about where she had her naked picture posted online, sort of like in a revenge porn. She was underage and all that. That type of stuff absolutely needs to be addressed, right? Like that's not kosher, right? Even if she's not underage, posting naked pictures of somebody online without their consent for the world to see is not kosher, right? Not even a woman, a guy, right? It happened to a Reddit mod, had his unit posted all over Reddit and hidden within SRS. Like, that stuff is not kosher. So that stuff absolutely should be addressed. The fact that some people actually get legit harassment, yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. Try and solve it. I don't know how you solve it. I don't even know if it's solvable. But, legit harassment should stop. I mean, but I would assume everybody would agree with that, right? Like, that should be the default position of all humans. Legit harassment shouldn't happen. So there is some stuff in the report I think it gets right. The problem is it's overshadowed by all the things it gets wrong.
Right, and that's really on the UN that have just made a mockery of something where there could have been something that everybody agreed, like you said. I mean, revenge porn and posting naked pictures of celebrities, like these things like that where you hack into somebody's phone and take these private things. They're, I mean, that's a bad thing to do, and it's something that like everybody can agree is bad. But when you link that to the porn industry or online criticism, you just make a mockery of the whole issue, and now nobody is like really on board with this report. I mean, they kind of lost Zoe Quinn to an extent because of how bad the report was. So it's like you went there and now you've just completely destroyed everything you were planning to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoe Quinn, Randy Harper, all of them are backtracking and going, whoa, wait. This isn't what she meant. And when you're at that point where the person who spoke in front of you is saying, that's not what I meant, this is bad, you've made a mockery of it, right? I mean, you've linked revenge porn and naked images of minors and physical sexual assault with Pokemon, right? Like, there's no way anybody can take that seriously, in my opinion. And that's too bad, because it was, there is serious issues to be solved, and they made a mockery, as Ash said.
Okay, last question for everybody here. Well, actually, not last question. We're actually about to wrap up. Do you guys have any statements or anything you wish to say about this at all?
Yeah, I think that something to really consider at this point is just, at least for other women online, I know women who agree with me that are just at this point, some of this stuff is really not harassment. It's really not as so bad that you're like, I need the authorities, I need protection. Like, don't be the damsel in distress. Like, really evaluate, is this actually a problem, or is this or am I, making more out of it? I mean, this whole rush to become a victim, I'm seeing it is not helpful for women. If we're supposed to be helping women, I don't see how infantilizing women is empowering them at this point.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, right? I'm not a woman, so it's hard to like offer commentary on it from that perspective. But the fact that the world, right, like women are being painted as weak little victims in front of the world doesn't sit well with me, right? It doesn't sit well with me because I have a young daughter who's got to live in that world that views her as a weak little victim of everything. And I'm not trying to say think of the children, but as a father, that is the first thing I think of is my daughter is not going to be a weak little victim of every evil man ever to exist, right? And the other question I actually really wish I got to ask Alison, so if she's still listening, I'm going to throw it out there, is I wish the report addressed who's doing the harassment of women, right? Like, because it really makes you believe it's men. But I know in high school and I know in college, any woman I spoke to about being harassed and bullied almost always came from other women. But the report makes you believe it's men, but is it really coming from men? Or is it coming from other women that they just kind of quietly ignored?
Exactly, and that's a good question.
Okay, well, thank you guys very much for coming on. We got Ashe Schow from Washington Examiner and Jason, aka codeGrit, and very briefly Alison with the Honey Badger Brigade. I'm Aaron Pabone. Thank you very much for tuning into this live stream. Have a good one.
Thank you.